I thought it's probably a good time for me to do a video about what this whole process of learning to swim is for me, because this is the big challenge as far as I'm concerned. It's kind of why I'm doing these vlogs, because I figure that if I can actually do it, it's hopefully something that will help other people to see that even when you're a sort of like middle average fitness 45-year-old man, there's still things that you can plan to do that seem impossible and are possible. So I forget quite how much I'd said when I was introducing the channel, but the thing that where I was at before this is that basically I was able to swim a length of a 25-meter pool, front crawl, but I would be exhausted by the end of it, and I could not swim back if you asked me to. The best I have ever been as a swimmer, once probably, if we went back maybe, I mean it's before my son was born, must have been 20 years ago, when I'd done some adult improver lessons when I lived up in Sheffield. I probably got to a point there where I could swim a length of a 25-meter pool and back again. But that is the absolute pinnacle that I've ever really achieved. So 50 meters of swimming, front crawl, and then not being able to do any more for a good few minutes of full recovery and everything. So it's a bit weird, because I mean the teacher just said to me, well, you haven't started as a beginner, you started as a swimmer. It doesn't feel like I'm a swimmer, because I look at people who can just swim effortlessly and with ease, and it feels really I feel so far from them. But I guess I could hack my way through the pool, so I get where they're coming from. So what am I actually, so I've started these lessons probably middle of October. I think I've had maybe 5 or 6 lessons, and what I've also found is that one of my teachers happens to do her own swimming in the pool leisurely whilst on the session that I'm doing with swimming. So I've kind of like been finding I keep on getting extra tips, which is nice actually. And it's just the overriding message is it feels so complicated. I don't understand it, because it looks so easy when you see other people doing it. It looks so easy, and I get that people kind of like tweak their stroke to make it better, but to be able to actually just keep on going backwards and forwards, it feels so far from it. So the things that I've so far been told about what I'm doing that I've tried to work on include the fact that as I was doing the crawl, I was crossing my arms. So she said I was sort of like snaking across the pool. As I was bringing my arm out of the water and trying to go forward again, I was pulling it through the water, not going forward far enough. I wasn't pulling my hand back far enough. When I breathe, I'm either shoving my head too quickly rather than rolling round. I'm definitely not kicking right. My breathing is really hard. And what was really frustrating about this whole process is that I'm really struggling to get anything kind of like unconsciously competent and just be able to do it and then tweak it, if you know what I mean. So like every new thing that they point out I could tweak, I'm like, great, I'll tweak it, but I'm not confident that I've got the other stuff good enough that I won't fall back into bad habits on that stuff. So and then I get a bit overwhelmed with it all. I feel like my breathing is probably one of the key elements of it. I can tell that I'm not breathing. I think I'm not letting myself breathe out enough whilst my head's underwater. So I'm trying to breathe every 3 strokes, so alternating which side I'm actually breathing from. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of like, I think I know what I need to do is I kind of need to breathe out by the time the sides. So if I'm breathing out on my right side, as my right hand goes in before I breathe, I need to get my breath going out at that point. Because what's happening is I'm tending to have my arm back and then remembering I need to be releasing my breath, letting a little bit of air out, putting my head around in a panic, either trying to breathe out and breathe in at the same, and breathe out and breathe in whilst my head's up, neither which work, or just breathing in, but I haven't left enough space in my lungs to get a good amount of air in, and I'm just over the course of even a width, sort of like clearly not getting enough oxygen. there was a really helpful tip that I had just now, where she spoke about doing explosive breathing. So kind of like in that stroke before I'm coming out my right side, breathing out explosively so that my lung is more empty, so that when my head comes round, I've then got capacity to take more in. And I had a couple of widths doing that, and that did feel a bit better. I'm also noticing that, like, I've also been told I need to slow my stroke down, so try to do that, but then I worry about sinking, feel like I'm sinking. And what I also find is that by slowing my stroke down, I've then been trying to keep the side when I'm breathing. So if I'm breathing on my right, so my left hand is ahead of me, and I'm trying to keep that kind of like I'm coasting on that left hand whilst taking the breath. But then I was finding that like that's then kind of like just floated down below me, as it were. So then that stroke is pointless. And so they're saying, oh no, that still needs to be an explosive stroke. And you know, I'm definitely not complaining about the teaching I'm getting, because they're giving me so many helpful points and everything. The message though is I'm just finding it really hard to keep it all together. And so now I am making progress. I can tell my stroke is better. At least I know what I'm doing wrong now, and I know so when I have my lessons, I make sure that I take at least a minute between each width, so that each time I do it, I am able to focus on the technique and think about the technique. And in the minute between each width, I'm trying to replay a little bit in my head what I've just been doing, what am I noticing, what I'm going to do next time, and so on and so forth. Whereas when I'm coming to do training sessions in between the lessons, the idea is to take shorter breaks between each width to try and build up the stamina and so on. So I'm trying to make sure I get the right balance between building up the stamina and building up the technique. Not doing so much of the stamina building that I'm doing a bad stroke and then losing the technique, which is the other risk I've been told I had. Today, at the end, so like I said, my lessons are all width lessons, right? And the end, when I'd seen one of the teachers on Monday in the general training session, she'd been like, oh, well, we can do a length at the end of the session, because I think you're not, she was like, by the time you've actually got the rhythm of your stroke, you've reached the end of the width. So let's see what it's like if you do a length and see how. So, having had a few tips, I then did a length today at the end of today's session, and I've been working a lot on my arms and on my breathing. She'd told me to put a bend into my arm in a different kind of way, and I kind of was doing that. So I did this length. It didn't feel brilliant, but I got to the end and said, oh yeah, your arm's looking so much better, breathing's so much better, your legs are rubbish. Well, I don't know if they said rubbish. They were like, your legs are the problem. I think that's probably, to be fair to them, they wouldn't say rubbish, they're lovely people. But not that I would blame them, because I think they probably are just rubbish. Because apparently as I get towards the end of the length, my legs just get wider and wider apart. So I'm kind of like, I already know my kicking is just rubbish. Like, so that was the other thing I haven't said. My kicking is just awful, apparently. I just don't really do any kicking. I've got incredibly inflexible ankles. I think I've only got about 20 degrees of movement in my ankles, and that's something I'm trying to work on outside of swimming. So my kicking is bad, but they said my legs are just going really wide by the end of a length, and that takes away any streamlining, and so all the work I'm putting into my stroke is kind of like being lost. So yeah, as you can see, this is why I feel like it's fair to say if I'm not a beginner, then I'm definitely at the very earliest possible stage of being considered a swimmer. And a long way yet from being able to do 2.4 miles in open water in Tenby Bay. But I've got a long time to do it. So it's possible. It's doable, right? We'll see.